First off, you emailed me this morning. You were asking for people to basically send in information about drought. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, so as we're moving into drought, it's really important to understand where drought is, and just as important where drought isn't. And drought is really we like to define it as like an absence of precipitation. We have dry soils, that sort of thing. But really, what drought is the impacts. And so that's what is really challenging to monitor across a large state as Illinois, when you have different places that are maybe very, very wet still, but a lot of places that are still pretty dry. And so what was really important when monitoring drought is getting those impact reports and condition reports from folks on the ground in their area saying, yes, it's very dry, and here's what I'm seeing: tree stress, lawn stress, whatever it is. What the creek is really low, or folks saying, yeah, I know you painted my area in drought, but actually we're doing fine. There's no real impact here so far. And so there's multiple ways for folks to do that. I think one of the best is the National Drought Mitigation CMOR. It's CMOR, the Condition Monitoring Observer Reporting System. And that is a really slick system you can go through and report exactly where you're seeing a potential impact or lack of impact, how dry it actually is, the expectation of, okay, have you seen it this dry once every 10 years, once every 20 years, maybe never before, things like that. That's a really good way. And that goes directly to the National Drought Mitigation Center, which is something that I can see then to kind of plug into our monitoring. Also, for those who are CocoRoss observers, I'm not going to ask anybody to join CocoRoss for those who are saying, what is CocoRoss? But for those who are CocoRoss observers, remember that you can also fill out condition reports. And I definitely, while we're going into drought, while we're in drought, definitely encourage you to do so. Even if it's, again, just saying no change or things are getting really, really dry. Every report matters, and photos make a report 10 times more valuable. The last is contacting me directly with my email address, statecli@isws.illinois.edu. If you can't remember that, just Google state climatologist. And again, emails of what conditions look like around your area of the state. Photos are great. All of those are ways that you can report. But again, this is really, really helping to be able to make sure that we can accurately monitor what is going on as we're moving into drought.
So when we talk about drought, this time of year, drought may be a little more sensitive to the agricultural industry. What kind of impacts are you looking for there?
Yeah, from ag in particular, any kind of impact that you may be seeing due to a lack of water. So we've heard a little bit, not so much around Champaign-Urbana, but in other parts of the state, of emergence issues from crusting of the soil, where we get lots of rain and then we get no rain at all for a while. So that's a drought impact. If we're seeing emergence, just fine, but then the corn, the young corn tends to look a little bit yellow. We may see some moisture stress from that. I mean, farmers know what moisture stress looks like in their particular crop. Pasture conditions are really important. We know pasture conditions go really fast when it gets hot and dry in the summertime, and then livestock conditions as well. If we're having issues with pasture, we need to be feeding hay. If there's water quality issues in stock tanks and ponds that livestock are drinking on, if your well is having issues, rural well issues. Now, we haven't really had drought long enough to really see those kind of impacts to water resources, but all of those are really important impacts from the rural and ag communities.
So when we talk about flash drought, I think some folks say, is this a new term? Can you kind of describe a little bit about what a flash drought is for our viewers?
Yeah, flash drought has been around for a little while now, probably 2 decades, but I think it's being used more because there's more awareness of it, and there's a little bit of misuse of it. But I think that what we're looking at right now is a really good, in a bad way, a good example of a flash drought where we're staying okay. Nobody would really say we're in a drought yet, but looking at 7 to 10 days of virtually no rain and really warm conditions will deplete soils very, very quickly. So we may go from your lawn, your trees, your garden doesn't show any impact to your lawn is shut down completely, and maybe your trees are starting to show the moisture stress. That's what flash drought really is. It's not something that happens on flash flood timescales where it's hourly, but relative to drought, we see kind of rapid onset of drought that's somewhat unexpected. And that's why, Jacob, I reached out to you, is because when we're in this sort of situation where we're kind of looking at the potential for flash drought, early communication and information flow, reporting of those impacts is really important, so we can direct the resources where they need, because things can happen really quickly.
So drought in the area is something that it seems like we've had in spots. I think it was maybe a year or two ago we had a little bit of moderate to severe drought. Is it something that's rather common, or tell me about how frequent these occur?
Yeah, that's a good question. Drought is an important part of our climate. just as every other kind of climate extreme is. The long-term patterns of drought show a reduction in kind of the long-term, really significant droughts. I mean, just in the last 40 years, we can really only point to a handful of statewide big droughts where there was significant impacts, not just in Champaign County, but beyond. Really, 2012, we have to go back to as the last one. But, we have these kind of smaller scale droughts that pop up, as you mentioned. I think Champaign-Urbana had like half an inch of rain last June. So we had that kind of area. But, if you go to Bloomington Normal or to Danville, they had a little bit more. And if you go up to Chicago, they had a lot more. So some of those kind of regional or local scale droughts do pop up. It's pretty rare that we get through a growing season without having some kind of drought in the drought monitor somewhere in Illinois, but it's rarely encompassing more than maybe just 5 or 6 counties. What we're seeing right now is that certain pockets of the state, Western Illinois, our area of Central Illinois, really all the way up to the Quad Cities, and the northeast corner of the state, Chicagoland area, are really the areas that we're seeing developing dryness that may emerge into drought. And so, for this event, if we do follow that very dry and warm pattern over the next couple of weeks, we could see not just a regional scale drought, but one that encompasses a large chunk of the state.
When it comes to the drought monitor, do you feel like that maybe is pretty in line with how things work, or is it maybe a little more reactionary?
It's a little bit reactionary just because it's released once a week, and it's really about conditions now. It explicitly does not include forecast information. So the fact that we're looking at a dry and warm period over the next 7 days, the drought monitor is not going to consider that. And so it's really when the map is released on Thursday, it's really updated via Tuesday. So that's really snapshot of conditions Tuesday. But as we know, those conditions can change rather rapidly, as we know with flash drought. And so from one Tuesday to another, we could see some pretty significant change. So every single day that goes by, the drought monitor is a little bit less, accurate as far as where drought necessarily is if we see those big changes. But it is the gold standard of drought monitoring. And as far as understanding where drought is, it's really good resource, especially in the days after its release.
When it comes to the drought monitor and the information that you're looking to collect, how closely do you work with those folks who work on the drought monitor?
Yeah, so I'm not a drought monitor author. There's one author each week that handles the entire country. But what I do is I coordinate the Illinois kind of recommendations for that author. So one author drawing drought all the way across the entire United States is I mean, it's a really tough endeavor. So what they do is they take local reports of, okay, it's not so great here, it's looking better here, and I kind of coordinate the Illinois team along with folks from National Weather Service, other folks from State Water Survey, universities, to try to get a good eye picture of, okay, here's what we're actually seeing in Illinois, and then give those recommendations to the drought monitor. Now, the drought monitor author may say thanks but no thanks, or they may take it in full. It's really up to them. It's their name on the map, but I kind of coordinate those recommendations so that we can get a good depiction of what things are like in Illinois, which makes those reports that much more important, because I do look, if somebody makes a CoCoRaHS or a Seymour report, I'm looking at that every single week, and that goes directly into my recommendations to the drought monitor.
Looking forward for the next week or two, do you suspect that moderate or severe drought conditions may appear on the drought monitor in Illinois?
It's possible that moderate drought may expand. We do have some moderate drought out in Western Illinois, on Adams and maybe Pike counties. It is likely that we're going to see some expansion or some maybe new pockets of moderate drought. I don't think we'll see severe drought yet. Severe drought, we really want to look for those impacts, water resources, ag impacts, before we move to that severe drought, which again really is why we need those reports. But I do expect that this week, and then if forecasts hold for the hot and dry for all of next week, then possibly next week we may see some additional expansion of at least moderate drought.
Okay, last question. Maybe a 10 to 15 second little nugget I'm looking for here. Just pitch why it's important that people provide information to you and through the channels you've described. Why is it important that people provide info on what they're seeing with drought conditions?
Yeah, Illinois is a big state. I'm one person stationed in Champaign-Urbana. And so to understand what's going on all around the state, to make sure that resources flow in the right direction to the right places, we got to know what's going on. So those impacts and condition reports are vital for that information flow.